2 o'clock, I've just been told. And welcome all to this meeting of the Highways and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Standard rules: microphones on when you're speaking, microphones off when you're not speaking. Please put your phones onto silent. So see, double checking. I'm not aware of a fire alarm test, so we have to assume that if one goes off, it's real. And I'd be grateful if you'd showed me the quickest way out of here. But I believe it's through the doors, to the stairs and down. Okay, so have we got anybody on the website? No, we haven't. So today we've received apologies from Mr. O'Shea, and Mr. Page is here in his stead. You're welcome. And Mr. Michael Mullaney has also shared his apologies, but I'm not aware of a substitute in his stead. So we'll move on. It says here, turn your microphones on and off. We've done that bit. So we can move on now. The first item is the minutes held on June the 5th. Now, they've all been circulated. I presume they've all been read. So can I just go straight forward to a nomination to accept them, please? Thank you, Mr. Smith and Mr. Bradshaw. Okay, so that's good. Moving on to item 2, question time. I haven't received any. I was actually going to say I was on question time once, but I didn't get a question answered. The next item is questions by members understanding orders 7.3 and 7.5, and no such questions have been received. Under urgent items, again, I've not received anything under urgent items. When I say I haven't, I am talking about the royal we here, Akko and myself, without which I wouldn't be able to do this as well as I do. Next, we have declarations of interest. Does anybody wish to declare any interest in any of the items in today's agenda? So none of you are interested. Fine, good. Thank you very much. Any declarations of the party whip? So no whipping. And I've not received any petitions. And moving on to item 8, Highways and Transport Performance Record. Now, I believe that is under the control of Ms. Carruthers, with the assistance of Ms. Julov. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, while I'm presenting it, these are the performance indicators across our highways and transport services. Nicola Truelove from Chief Executive Department helps from the Business Intelligence Unit. She compiles the report and is here to help answer if needed. And also I have Assistant Director Jana Walker here today as well, who can help answer any of your questions. But if it's okay, Chair, I'll take you through the report. I'll probably take a wee bit longer than maybe I normally would. This report comes 6 monthly to the committee, but I'm very aware this is the first time it'll have been to this committee in this form. Okay, so if you just bear with me. Just, it might be useful, I'll just point you particularly towards Appendix A, the dashboard. I'll kind of talk through that one. So if you're looking at that, that might be helpful for you. So it's the Q1 report for 2025, and it covers all the key indicators we have across our highways and transport services that are aligned to our the Council's strategic plan. It assesses various metrics, including road condition, public satisfaction across some of our services, road safety, environmental impact, and where we can, it does benchmark us against comparator authorities. We have a comparator group of authorities which our business intelligence colleagues do the calculations around, and that's 32 English county authorities. So we're not comparing with authorities that have got nothing in common with us. So it tries to give a bit of a benchmark on how we're doing in those indicators across similar type authorities, which is always quite interesting. As you'll see as we go through the report, there's a number of indicators that we as the County Council have a lesser ability to really directly control and influence. And there's some which, are kind of really within our gift, etc. And that's indicated there with the last column in that dashboard you'll see has either an L or a C in it. The ones where we have more of a control and influence are marked with an L, i.e. Leicestershire, and the ones that have, lesser control and influence are marked with a C on that dashboard. However, it does give you a kind of trajectory over time, a trend over time, about things that are quite important across highways and transport, how we're doing, how the county's doing, etc. Still useful data there. Just as a bit of a summary at this point in time, of 15 indicators with targets, 4 have met their target or are on track to meet their target. 10 indicators are in the top quartile. That's where we're measured against our comparator counties, and 2 are below average compared to other counties. So relatively, we do not badly compare to those comparator authorities. So just then getting into the nitty-gritty detail. I didn't even touch it, apologies. I am pressing the button. It is on red. Oh, is it? Okay. You're trying to just keep me on my toes, aren't you, Chair? Okay. I'll go back to highway condition satisfaction, if that's all right. This is overall satisfaction with the condition of the highway. What we do is we take part, and I'm sure you will see at some point in your inbox a request for you to input to something called the National Highways and Transport Survey. And this is where we get this data from. So in terms of satisfaction, it remains low at 22%. Now, you might think that that's incredibly low, but actually we're in the top quartile. Unfortunately, as you all know how important highways are to the public out there, the level of satisfaction, people obviously want to see them maintained better, less congestion. There's a whole host of things that will come into that indicator. However, what we'll see is we are in the top quartile. So while it's relatively low, we do well against the other authorities. In terms of road maintenance, as you see, they're split out into different road categories. For principal roads needing maintenance, that's held at 3%. We do surveys that actually then will tell us what percentage of our road we consider in need of structural maintenance. That's quite significant work. So it's not just filling in potholes or surface dressing, it's quite significant works. And that is being held steady at 3%. And again, we perform well against our comparator authorities, and it's slightly above target. Non-principal roads and unclassified roads, the next 2 ones you'll see down there, they met their targets, and again, between them, they're either in the first or second quartile. So again, we are doing well. What we'll say, however, is, as every local authority in this country, we are really challenged on the funding for highway maintenance. So, trends are going like that in terms of, going downwards, for people not looking at me, are going downwards in terms of the quality and the condition of highway networks out there. And I'm sure you see that wherever you travel around the country and county. We are challenged with the money, and that's driven by things like funding from DFT has been held relatively stable over a good number of years. So in terms of inflation, it doesn't help us. We've got more traffic on the roads, more heavier traffic on the roads. We're seeing more severe weather events like rain, heat, all causes damage to the highway network. And the other thing that causes damage is every time a utilities company or a developer goes in and digs up the road, it creates potential for defects because there's less strength in that carriageway. So we are on a difficult journey. So while we're doing well at the moment against other authorities, it is an incredibly difficult position for all authorities there, and the trend in terms of network conditions going down. I'm just warning you up for future reports around highway maintenance, and particularly related to budget. So if I move on then, public transport satisfaction with local bus services, that's plateaued. It's at 43% and it's below our target, and it is on the third quartile. Bus passenger journeys, however, have increased slightly in this quarter, exceeding 10 million target, still in the bottom quartile compared to other authorities. And I'll just point out, it is still well below our pre-COVID figures. We've never recovered. And equally, that's a similar trend across the country. Bus patronage is just never really quite got up in most areas, apart from city areas, to pre-COVID levels. And park and ride journeys have similarly fallen slightly in quarter four. Other transport satisfaction, if I move down the list, while satisfaction with cycle routes, rights of way and pavements all declined slightly and missed their targets, they do remain in the top quartile nationally. So again, we're doing well comparatively. Traffic congestion satisfaction improved to 30%. It's still below a target and above average. This is one whereby it's national data that comes out from DFT about peak hour speeds, etc. What is morning peak hour speeds on the network and free flow conditions. As I say, that is improved just slightly. We do rely on that annual DFT data though. Average vehicle speeds on A-class roads has been stable. Again, it's DFT data that comes out and measures all that. And second quartile nationally and above the English average. So we're at 30 miles an hour for that. The English average is 23, so we are doing a fair bit better than that. Road safety satisfaction. Road safety decreased to 45% in terms of satisfaction with that, missing its target. But again, we do in Leicestershire do well both nationally and against our comparator authorities. So while it's missed its target, it's still in the top quartile. In terms of all 5 road safety casualty indicators, we rank in the top quartile nationally. Now, we do bring to this committee every March, usually around about March, it is a March committee meeting that we bring it to, an annual report on road safety that goes into all the detail about where we are in terms of our casualty figures, the activities we've been doing across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland as the Road Safety Partnership, and there's a whole host of detail there. So we really go into detail in that with the committee as part of that report. As I say, while we're challenged as ever and we're working hard to reduce casualties, we do well compared to the national position. If I move on, just lastly to the clean and green outcome as part of the strategic plan and look at that carbon emission target, that's remained stable in terms of just over 1,100 kilotons in 2023. That data is. It performs above average in the second quartile nationally. That data comes from it's the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. So again, national data is produced annually. Now, interesting, while everybody, you'd assume the emissions from transport, there is a lot of exclusions on this. The exclusions include motorways, the emission trading scheme sites, diesel railways, emissions from land use and forestry. So it is quite a specific targeted area that looks at transport in relation to local, specifically local transport there. As I say, it's remained relatively stable on that last data. I know that's been a whiz through and there's lots of information there, and Appendix B contains information on some of the what exactly the indicators are and the metrics around them if you're more interested in that. But more than happy to take questions, Chair, and I'm sure Nicola and Jana can assist in that as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was a very comprehensive report and nicely explained. Do we have any questions? Mr. Morris, could you?
Well, basically this is government data, so they do the calculating for us. It's the estimate in kilotons of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions for the transport sector within the scope of influence of LAs, it excludes what Anne's already covered. There are 2 other, the emissions from combustion or lubricants from vehicles which run on LPG. And the other transport sector,
basically, this is they're guessing.
It is an estimate, yes.
A guess.
It is an estimate.
Thank you.
Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Anne, for the report. Very comprehensive as usual. Just a personal one for me on the report. It goes into a lot of detail and statistics. It would be great if some of that information was in bar charts or graphs. I know we've got the Appendix A at the end, but how we're doing comparatively on previous years against a county average. Just I'm better at pictures than words sometimes, digging into the detail, because it's disappointing that we're missing some of the targets. On the average speed one, is it good that we are at 31 miles an hour? Because one of the biggest challenges I have is speeding traffic in all of my villages and trying to get the speed down. So it's maybe a contradictory one. Two questions. One on highway condition. I fully understand the costs of the county council and the ability to keep the road network in a good condition. One of the things I always get in the neck is potholes. And I know in previous meetings, Anne, you said it's your wish that you don't do potholes. You'd like to resurface the road. Have you got any idea what budget the county council would need if we had an improved highway network with less potholes, so that we could, so the residents of Leicestershire could say, wow, this is the county where we need to come to because the roads are in such good condition. It is a budgetary thing which the county council needs to take account of, but for me it might be worth looking at to see what the budget would need to be to have our roads in a condition where all the residents and paths as well would be in a condition that everybody would be happy with. Now the second one is on the casualties. Is there any indicators that we can identify whether the casualties were the result of anything to do with lighting or signage or speed that contribute to those figures? Thank you, Anne.
Before you answer that, Anne, if I might just add on to what Mr. Lovegrove has said, that I read some time ago that one of the problems with potholes at the moment is that the increase in potholes is being because of a reduction in the maintenance. And whereas councils reduced the amount of maintenance to save money, it actually lost money because it created more potholes. And had they maintained the maintenance structure before, then there wouldn't be so many potholes. If you don't mind, Mr. Lovegrove, I'd like to add that onto your comment.
I think, Chairman, if that could be your comment, not my comments. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll try and cover all the points if that's all right. And then actually I might revert to Jan, I'm sure, who will come in on a number of things as well. The first query, average speed, is 30 miles an hour a good thing? This is about a measure about level of congestion. So the lower your speeds, the more you're sitting in traffic, which actually ultimately has a negative effect on your local economy. It's a negative factor about inward investment, isn't it? It's costing every business. I used to work in Kent before I came here, and there used to be, because we'd have the Dartford crossing would close at times and lorries would be stuck on that. The Freight Transport Association used to quote £1 a minute for a lorry. You know, that's what's costing that business. It's not good if for anybody, you, me, business, etc. If congestion is greater, it costs ultimately one way or another. So actually, the higher the speed you have on this particular indicator, the better. We all get, absolutely. Nobody wants speeding traffic out there, etc. That's a whole different issue linked to the road safety one. But on this particular indicator, it's in effect a proxy for what's your congestion. And therefore, you know, the lower the speed, the more impact on things like your local economy and your, you know, all the issues we know congestion causes. In terms of your budget for maintenance, what would you need for really good maintenance? We've actually been doing a lot of modelling around that. Now, I'm not going to be drawn into absolute figures because somebody will quote me and I'll be held out there as a bad example. But I think fundamentally to say you're looking at substantially more. You're not looking at a small percentage, 5-10% more on our current budgets. You're looking 50, 100 more than that. Just to give you an idea, Alarm, which is a national organisation, every year carry out a survey about the backlog that's needed for maintenance nationally. That figure, it won't surprise you to hear, that figure goes up every year, and I think it's standing at 17 billion across the country, across England. So that means 17 billion more to get the roads to a reasonable state. Now, to put that in perspective, DFT's allocation to local authorities, now, okay, that excludes national highways, but they have something like 3% of the road network, to local authorities is about 1.5 billion a year. And the backlog is 17 billion. If you just multiply that down to Leicestershire, you can see we're not talking about just give us 5 or more, 10% more. We're talking about, doubling our maintenance budgets, etc., to make a real impact, to get us up to a reasonable standard, and then keep it there. Okay. I'll maybe just go into Mr. Piper's point about, you read something about reducing maintenance budgets has led to this increase in potholes. What I'd say is, and I can't speak for every authority, but our authority is Leicestershire. DFT allocates us a maintenance grant every year, okay? And that has largely stayed roughly the same for, I'd say the last decade. We've had the odd blip where they've given us a bit more pothole money in February and say spend it by the end of March. But it's largely stayed the same. And as I mentioned earlier, things like inflation, things like increasing wear and tear, increasing utility works causing, future defects, severe weather events, actually we're seeing more and more quicker deterioration of the network. Therefore, one, less bang for our bucks because everything costs more now, and two, more demand on the network means that gap between what you're able to do every year and the demand for work on the network, you need to do work, is increasing. So it's not that we've reduced our budget, it's the fact that the money hasn't really increased and the demand for work and budget and spend has increased, so that differential is greater. And the other thing is, historically, most local authorities will put in some of their own money to top up highway maintenance because they recognise how important it is to their communities and their economy. However, most authorities, and this Leicestershire is no different, their ability to put in some of their own money to top up the DFT is severely reduced because of all the financial challenges you're all well aware of. I'll move on then to, the last point was casualties, and I'm going to hand this one to Jana, if that's all right, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Anne. I was just going to sort of talk a little bit about the process for us when a fatality happens, for instance, and just to sort of put that in context. So there's phasing on reporting of road casualty incidents. So you get an initial report, there's an investigation, and then there's a confirmed. So, and I think there's a note in the report, isn't there, Nicola, about the rolling total. So they do get reviewed. But as soon as that incident happens, we'll get a report, usually from the police. All the agencies, so the Highway Authority, the police, will review that and see if there's anything immediately that could be done to prevent that risk occurring again. And similarly, if there's anything obvious that we can take into our road safety partnership approach to learning. So I think we just have to think about, in terms of breaking down sort of reasons for that. We do produce a report every year on the road safety partnership area as a whole. So that's Leicestershire, Rutland, and it's also got the motorway network, and the reasons for incidents are broken down there. So I'd be happy to circulate the latest one that's been confirmed to this committee, and it usually gets presented as part of the work we do in March. But there's a lot of information in that report, and it can sometimes, some of those can get lost. So you get a broad category, things like distraction, if there were physical things on the road, anything like that would be involved there. But just to reassure you, we do immediately look at that. Then the formal investigation will take place. If there's anything that comes out of that, we would consider and move on. And we'll look at trends, so probably won't surprise you to know over the summer period we've had some really nice weather. We have seen, really unfortunately, a kind of a corresponding increase in motorcycle incidents. We've also probably over the last couple of years, the Road Safety Partnership has been focusing on things like where we can see that there's a number of single vehicle accidents. What can we do about that and look at that data and use that to inform it? So we do look at those causes, but we do it in phases. And probably the best way for us to look at that in a bit more detail is to use that Road Safety Partnership report. And I'll circulate the details of that to this committee if that's helpful, Chair.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on one or two of the points, just for my clarification. On the first one, on the average speed, which I take the information out, and I completely understand that. It'd be nice if there was an opportunity maybe to do urban roads and rural roads, because like I said, where I am, it's the speeding traffic, and it's obviously a wry smile if I said it was a good objective, that we were above the average speed limit. And the second one, quite right, understand how tight the county budget is, and for any increase in spend on highway maintenance, either on potholes or on resurfacing, that money would have to come from another department, because it's opportunity cost. And do we spend the money on more pothole or resurfacing, or is it's on another department within County Hall? So that's unless there's more money coming from central government, we are where we are. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, my apologies, Mr. Whitford. I should have gone to you for comment first before the rest of us, and then I'll come back to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing much to add to that, except for to thank, obviously, Anne and Jana for their report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep, Mr. Smith.
Second time lucky. There we go. Thank you, Chair. Mine's a comment and a question, if that's okay. The first comment really is around the bus services. Obviously, we do see a dwindling amount of bus users patronage, and I can only see that decreasing further in the future due to the age of people that generally use buses, and also the change in lifestyle of people, particularly since COVID. But I think something that needs highlighting is the work that this council has done through the money that we received last year through the previous administration with the on-demand service. And Fox Connect, it has made significant differences in areas like mine in northwest Leicestershire, throughout the whole of the parliamentary constituency, that is. One of my, there may be a small dwindling number, but they're also a very vocal number. I get a number of complaints each week regarding bus services, one of which being my dear mother. So thank you very much for everything that you do with the Fox Connect. It's certainly making me not having to speak to my mum quite as often. Then also, my question really is around pavements. Like many of the colleagues in the room, we spent an awful lot of time pounding those pavements earlier this year. And I think when you do walk an awful lot, I mean, we're walking miles every day, you can see the deterioration in the footpaths, and I can understand why we must always prioritise roads. But I feel personally that perhaps the footpaths haven't been looked at maybe quite so much in recent years. But also on top of that is the fact that these third-party organisations come up, dig up the roads. Are they reinstating them properly? Because I don't know the exact, maybe you can enlighten me, how often do the footpaths come under for resurfacing comparatively to road surfaces? And can we basically hold these people to account to make sure that they are resurfaced and put back to reinstatement better? Thank you.
We've all got a problem today, haven't we, with these? Anyway, firstly on the buses, you comment about patronage, and obviously we've seen there for the performance indicators, well, it has gone up slightly, it's still below the pre-COVID amount. You will know, and I'm sure all members are aware, that, you know, we've had quite a lot of BSIP funding, Bus Service Improvement Plan, that's government name for it, from DFT over the last couple of years, and we're hoping it's continued. You know, the sounds are positive on that. And with that, we have been doing an awful lot of work of public transport network reviews around the county. So really working with the operators through our enhanced partnership. That's a a setup we've got, a governance setup we've got with the bus operators required by government to oversee some of the, do a lot of things, but equally oversee some of the spending of that BSIP funding, to look at how we make more effective the public transport offer in the county. So making it a really effective one. So our number one objective is to support the commercial services. Something like 90% of the bus services in this county are commercial. So it's about supporting them and making sure they get patronage to keep them commercial, but equally filling in those gaps for people where there isn't a commercial service and feeding into those so they can then access the, you know, towns and cities, etc. So with that, we are hoping, because if we have a better public transport offer for people, if I get my words out, that actually patronage increases, because over time, unless the funding continues for those subsidised services from government, we will be in a position of withdrawing those. And the only saving grace is if there's enough patronage to make them commercial. Ideally, all our services would be commercial. It's not a huge problem cities have, but for rural counties like ours, you'll appreciate it's a difficulty because we don't have that massive population, do we? So we're hopeful that actually the bus patronage will continue to grow, and with the new services, the new networks, so we're hoping meet people's demand better, that actually we can grow those services. Moving on to DDRT, you're absolutely right. We got funding from DFT a few years ago from the Rural Mobility Fund to put on the Fox Connect, and you know that has been a real good news story. Now, part of the money we've got with the BSIP money now, we recognise for some areas the traditional bus service of a bus an hour, etc., is never going to be commercially viable, and it's going to have little patronage on it. So it's not a good use of that grant funding. So we have been looking to extend those DDRTs. For instance, we put on a service in Melton that started on the 6th of January this year. The reason I remember that is, I'm sure most of you will remember, 6th of January, we had the worst floods this county has ever seen. Anyway, first month of that service, we had phenomenal numbers on that service. It's been really, really positive, and we're rolling that out, that model, in other areas, because public transport in rural areas doesn't work the same way as public transport in cities. So we're trying to find more cost-effective ways to meet the needs of the public, so they have got choices in how they travel in those areas. So absolutely agree that Fox Connect model is a really, really positive one. I'm sorry it means that you're not talking to your mum as much, though. I don't know if that's a positive outcome of it. The other thing you got onto was reinstatements, wasn't it, in footways, and the amount of money we've been putting into footways. Absolutely, your observations are absolutely correct. For a number of years, we put very little funding into footways. We just couldn't do it. You know, there's too many things we have to spread the money out onto, be it surface dressing, be it patching, be it highways drainage, because that grant we get for government has to go across everything. Street lighting, column replacement, everything. It's not just about potholes and highway maintenance. It's spread really, really thin. So a few years we had very little going into footways. We are in a slightly better position now because we have got something called the local transport grant, which government has allocated, and we've had a 4-year allocation. First time ever we've had a multi-year settlement, so that we've got certainty about planning our programmes and what we can spend over the next few years and getting more bang for our bucks. And some of that local transport grant can be spent on maintenance. So we're now beginning to go back and, you know, redress some of those issues where we know we've been spread too thin. It's not the answer to everything. Please don't think it's going to fix absolutely everything out there that needs fixed, but actually it will help in the short term. But, you know, you're absolutely right. You know, there's been little investment in footways. On reinstatements, where we are with, you know, under the legislation, we require the utility provider or the developer to reinstate to the standard of the carriageway. Unfortunately, what that does, however, is, and I'm probably sorry to bore you if you've heard this from me before, anytime a utility, anybody digs up the road, you've automatically reduced the lifespan of that road by 30%. You've got a weakness, doesn't matter how you seal it. Water gets in there, you know, it melts in the heat, you know, cracks in the freeze thaw in the winter, you know, we're automatically down. So even although they may come in, they don't always, and we will hold them to account and get them back in, reinstate it to the right standard. We are in a worse position because you've created a weakness in that carriageway. So there's nothing we can do about that. They're legally entitled, utilities companies obviously are legally entitled to go in and maintain their infrastructure and put in new connections for development, etc. We have to, it's a fact of life, we have to allow them to go in and dig up the roads. Sorry, Janice.
Sorry, Chair. Just wondered if it was worth mentioning, building on what Anne said about the footway question, was that I chair a board where we manage our capital programme, and yesterday we were just awarded a contract specifically for maintaining footways proactively. So what you were asking, Anne was absolutely right. Our programmes largely relied on reactive footway maintenance. So, you know, a trip hazard effectively would get reported. We would go out and manage it in accordance with that. We've just, on the back of the local transport grant, launched a programme of proactive maintenance of some of our either most busy or most reported footways, and we're hoping that with the obviously it'll be subject to approval from cabinet, but the future years sort of allocations that we use will allow us to do some of that continued rather than sort of revert to the reactive approach as well. So that ability to plan the maintenance and to do what we largely term proactive things. So, you know, you would resurface an area rather than deal with, you know, the equivalent of a pothole in a pavement is has been really positive for us in that sense. So hopefully you'll actually start to see some of that on the ground over the coming months and into next year as well.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I remember something on this committee a couple of years back, and we were talking about the cycling and walking improvement grant. Is that further money that we may well get in the future that we could potentially use rather than a maintenance grant? We could look at a piece of pathway that we could say, well, actually, this would make a fantastic cycleway, and obviously kill two birds with one stone.
If that's okay, Chair. Yeah, exactly that. So I'm sure you all avidly read and remember all the cabinet reports that Anne and I bring all the time. But exactly that point was made in the June one with the additional money around we got from Active Travel England and the local transport grant, was to try and put those together. So if there's obvious links where there's basically you've probably all got areas in your patch where you think, why doesn't that footway or cycleway meet with this one? What are we doing about the gap in the middle? That we can do that, and also look at where people are already walking and cycling, but the condition of that asset is sort of either a hazard or preventing them from doing it, and using that money to make the best decisions both. So we are looking across all the funding that we've got to try and do that, and we try and balance the sort of need to maintain what we've got to be a good service provision, and then look at what else is coming down the line as well. So yeah, we will take those opportunities as they come up, and you'll be aware that the sort of more commitment we show to the walking, cycling, wheeling bit, the more money we're likely to receive. So it's sort of performance related on that basis.
Mr. Roxon.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, first of all, great report. I'll start by agreeing with Mr. Lovegrove. I'd like more pictures as well. You know, bar charts, pies, knock yourselves out. The other couple of points, I think they might be dealt with in the road traffic safety report that Jana mentioned. I was going to mention the seasonal factor, just because these numbers are so small anyway, that, you know, the casualty things, you know, 127 to 105, there's going to be natural fluctuation and things, and it might be more useful actually to see the previous year's identical quarter than the quarter before, you know, so you've got the same weather, the same light and all that sort of thing. And then also on the casualty bit, do we get any idea of things like e-bikes and e-scooters, whether they're having a role in, you know, increasing casualties and things like that? Because that would be quite useful to know.
Yes, so as you said, the more detailed report we have does compare year-on-year trends, and we also do where we see differences, because the same sort of thing. I was thinking, oh well, if we look at January to March one year, that would be really similar to January to March of the year. As you mentioned, the last couple of those periods have been really wet, whereas we've had some dry periods. So we do try and look into those trends and kind of point them out as well, so we can share that. And sorry, the second part of your question then, I was just going to answer it and it went out of my head. Sorry.
E-bikes and e-scooters, whether they're recording anywhere in this data.
Yes, they are. So we can do that. But to be honest, the numbers of incidents in Leicestershire, particularly because we're not part of any trial, that are happening elsewhere, are very, very low. But we can answer. We've got some data on that where they're reported.
Thank you. But they still seem to be all over the place. So that's.
Mr. Page, please. Oh, sorry. Yes, Anne.
Sorry, just a really, really quick one. I'll challenge Nicola to go away and think about more, pictures and things like that, and we'll see what happens next time. But just to point out in the short term, if it helps you, just on that dashboard at the end, at the right-hand side, you'll see a bit of a kind of line diagram, and that's just a trend over time. So it gives you a wee bit of a feel for things, but, absolutely take on board that maybe we could look at things in the main body of the report in terms of more pictorial. So we'll have to think about that one.
Sorry, is each dot a quarter then?
That's what I asked Nicola. And the answer is actually, if you look at the period, the column that says period, some indicators are quarterly, some are annual, depending on what that indicator is, that's what the dot is. So for some, that dot will be a year, and for some, that dot will be a quarter.
Thank you, I like that.
Okay.
Mr. Page.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a visual person as well, and so that kind of information I seem to be subbing quite often here, so that would be helpful. Just three questions here, quite unrelated, but the first one is the inflationary pressure that you've been under to maintain the level of maintenance or maintain the roads. Can you give us an indication of what that percentage increase has been? When I was talking to Justice recently about Gartrey 2, they talked about 100% increase in building materials for the prison. So I'd be very interested to know what you're actually having to work to. I'll come back to my other questions after you've answered that one, if that's all right.
I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to be able to be very precise on this one. A few years ago, if you remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago when we had I think it was one after the other of some gas line in Russia and then Ukraine war, and inflation went like that. At that time, and we usually work to small percentages. I think construction inflation went to 26%, but individual things like steel, sorry, I know that doesn't affect highway maintenance, but it does in terms of our major projects, so it just popped into my head, was up near 100%, things like that, so we are impacted by things like that. And in general, obviously, you have that construction inflation, but other things affect the cost of our highway maintenance because we're a largely in-house operation. Things like increases in fuel for all our vehicles, etc., will factor into that. In terms of sorry, I'm not able to. I'd have to ask my finance colleagues over time to go back and have a look and see what that average trend is, because literally we have seen peaks and not troughs. It's always going up, isn't it? But fast and then, slightly less fast. So I was going to say something else on that one. In terms of the DFT grant, that's not inflation linked at all. We just get the money we get and that is it. So it really does impact on our spending power, depending on what that level of inflation is.
Okay. I should imagine that a lot of those costs, if it's petroleum based, if it's energy based in terms of construction, those are the things that would have really impacted you. Yeah. Second question is about enforcement. It's one of my favourite subjects, as you know, Anne, probably. How do you go about enforcement in terms of the standards that Craig just mentioned in terms of road surfaces, making sure that those are repaired but to the same standard that you would expect? How do you do that?
We have inspectors that go out. So Roads and Street Work Act, NUSRA inspectors. So firstly, for somebody to come and work on the highway, sorry, I'm probably branching out a bit, but it gives you the context. Somebody to come and work on the highway, doesn't matter whether it's a developer or a utilities company, they have to put in for a permit from us. So they apply, they say what it is they want. So we will check, is it full closure? Is that really needed? How long do they need it? Is it three-way traffic lights and one-way working? Is it, stop and go board? Is it only on the footway? Is it, etc., etc. So we will look at all that and then approve it or not. And we'll also look at what else is going on in the network at that time, because often, there's only so much a network can take at any one time. So we will then program them and they'll have a permit for a certain period of time. They're allowed to be on the road network. When they go, obviously, they're required to have reinstated the road to the proper standard, etc., taken away all their signs and everything, because the number of calls we get about there's still signs out there that 9 times out of 10 are not our signs, it's the contractors or third parties. They're supposed to have cleared all that up. Our inspectors will check that. However, I think I would be unjust to you to, lead you to believe that we've got an inspector on every single set of roadworks the day it finishes. We are really, really stretched. Bear in mind that we've got over at any one time something like 1,000, 1,100 sets of roadworks going on in the county right now. We cannot have an inspector out inspecting those. So they have their routes, they will go out and look at stuff, they will pick stuff up. We get members of the public, obviously, you get them coming to you, you pass it on to us and we will act on that. But we do have an inspection regime that will pick these things up.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. The third question was around the pathways that we're talking about. And whilst the surface is one thing, it's the encroachment of vegetation that's another. So just recently, there's a mile stretch of road between Lubbenham and Market Harborough, and it's a big source of complaint that actually it's great that we mow it regularly and that the grass is kept low, but actually it's the encroachment. It's stopping parents from using their buggies on a very busy stretch of road. And I actually saw a lady the other day with a buggy actually going up along the side with her little child looking quite bemused, but it's a health and safety issue. And I want to make sure that we're covering that off, not just about the surface of the pavement. So when we do the assessments, it's to make sure there's an adequate width available to both pedestrians and potentially bicycles and things like buggies and wheelchairs for people who are actually disabled.
I think you can picture the precise one that you're talking about, because it came across my desk, I would say over a year ago anyway, and it's in a rural, isn't it? It's going out from the community. And I would say the response at that time was, we have to look at things, given in mind we've only got this set pot and we have got lots of things out there to do. Where does that come in our priority? And the issue when I asked the officers to go out and assess what's needed to be done was actually the encroachment is such because we've not had money to routinely all over the county go out and basically edge back rural paths on a regular base, that it's encroached stuff that there's no footway under there. Now our issue is if we take that back, we're then we're building a new footway for a mile or however long that is. We just could not justify the cost of that. However, I'm not saying I can solve that one. And not everyone's in that state. It will not be quite as bad. It'll be a bit of edging back, etc. As we've mentioned, that additional money we're seeing now, we're beginning to be able to look at things like that. Whereas 2-3 years ago, we were just saying, I'm sorry, we can't. I'm having to deal with the defects in the road, the real safety defects, the deep potholes, the street lighting columns that are going to fall down, that kind of thing. We are now in a bit of a different position. We can look at that kind of thing. I can't say I can guarantee we can definitely deal with that one, but we're in a slightly better position than we were when originally I looked at that particular list. But absolutely understand, for those communities, the few people that use it, it's an important link and it should be usable, etc.
If I may just add on to that one, when you're talking about the encroachment of the vegetation, does that not sometimes depend upon who owns the vegetation? And would it not be practicable to send them a letter saying, "Oi"?
Yes, no, absolutely. Sorry, I should have covered that in the last answer, but actually I knew that situation and the vegetation is highway vegetation, so it does come down to us. in an awful lot of instances whereby we are approached, and you will be approached by your residents, etc., to say this vegetation's overhanging the footway, etc., it's third party, i.e. it's a landowner next door, adjacent to the footway. What we will do is we will write to that landowner, property owner, household, etc., to say, please, we've noted your vegetation's overhanging the highway, please get it cut back. And there's something like 21 days to do that. If they don't do that, we'll do a second round of that. Our issue being, however, in order to then take legal enforcement action, there's a lot of resource required in this, both from the Highways Department and the Legal Department. Bear in mind, this is multiplied around the county. It's quite a common thing, this. So actually, it's rarely we take enforcement action because we just don't have the resources within the department or within the legal department to do that, because we're not going to get any income. There's no way of funding this. We have to meet that out of our existing budgets. So it means less work out there if we're doing that kind of thing. What we will try and do is work with the likes of the parish council, etc., to try and encourage that particular landowner to be a good neighbour and do that, etc. Because the last thing we want to do is start, unless it's an absolute safety critical issue, as a highway authority, going and cutting back third-party vegetation. I do it once, we're doing it absolutely everywhere in the county, and I can tell you now my whole highways budget will just go back and cutting other people's vegetation back. So yes, we do try, we will send people a letter, we do try and say it a bit more politely than, we do ask them to cut that back because it's their responsibility to do so. So you're absolutely right, often it's third-party responsibility.
Thank you. Now, I believe Mr. Cook has been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you probably remember me from last time. So a lot of you just said there is what I'm doing day in, day out. Referring to the pathways, suckers on trees that grow from the base of the tree. For those that don't understand what suckers are, they basically take over the whole of the pavement. There's a lot of that not being done now. My team are out there, like your team, with big mowers, doing the parks, looking after the edges. But we've had a lot of hot weather, and when they're not doing that, they're doing something else. So I'm just wondering what your guys are doing, or I do know what they're doing when I don't see them cutting the grass. Why can't they be utilised to do something else? That's my first question. If it's an health and safety issue, and we have got things on and I represent the parish council, and if it's a health and safety issue, we deal with that. If it's flailing somebody's edge back, I think there's a lot of red tape there that you have to cut through, which is just time wasting. I understand that you have to do this sometimes, but if there's a serious health and safety issue on footpaths, why these things are not being done? And the suckers are an example. That's my first question. So basically asking what our staff doing, and we've got an up period of 12 weeks. My job is to find a B plan for what the lads are doing today. Same with when it's raining, we've got to find a B plan, and there's always something else to do. I'm not insinuating the staff are doing nothing, but when you're out there, you see these things. Mr. Smith mentioned about the paths. I think that's a valid point. I'm probably a bit naive here, that when you do get some like Virgin, if I'm allowed to say that, come along and put the Wi-Fi in and they dig the pavement up. I never thought of it that way. And then another company comes along and they want to install something else. Am I right in here? Did you say there that they're entitled to do so, and that expense is then carried to the county council? If that was if this was a business, surely you'd be saying, well, look, if you want to put that in there, we're going to have to charge you and double the price, whatever it takes, quite rightly, to put these paths back to a good state. Because as you quite rightly said, when you start to mess around with something that's been put in, it never goes back unless it's been put back properly, or it never goes back right anyway. And we see that, all of us see that when we're walking on the paths where something's been put back and all of a sudden it's just sinking. So my question there is why aren't these companies, or why aren't you saying to these companies, well, let's say it's £1 million, charge them double that or something like that? Is that a bit of a silly question? But shouldn't they be held responsible? Shouldn't we be getting something back from them rather than expecting the taxpayers to pay for all this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First question about when they're not grass cutting. Yes, we had a particularly dry season, so the grass didn't grow. We've had other years where it's been phenomenal and we've been out there all the time and we can't keep up with it. But you're absolutely right. So we move our grass cutting gangs onto other things. We have got backlogs. I mean, I've got a backlog of over 3 million in highway drainage works, just things like cutting grips and the verges, etc. We've got more than enough work to put them. So you're absolutely right. Those gangs will go out every day on different work we've got because we've got so much work to do. I'm sure that won't surprise you. So yes, you're absolutely right. We redeploy them onto other activities. In terms of a very valid point, should they not be held responsible, the utilities company? Yes, absolutely right. We are absolutely governed by the legislation on this. Under the legislation, they absolutely have a right to go in and maintain and improve their infrastructure, etc. And that means working and digging up the highway. We do hold them to account. They have to reinstate to the right standard of construction, etc. But the issue being is, even when they do that, we are left in a worse position, because if you imagine it, you've got a completely undug up, sorry, that's not an official term, you've got a road that has got no trenches in it, no digging up, etc. The lifespan of that is, it could be 30, 40 years, fair wind, etc. If you've got a trench, the minute you've got a trench in that, even when they reinstate that absolutely properly, you've got a line of sealing it. That's immediately open to defects, in terms of over time, the water will get in, and it's just making it less resilient for, it's not going to last you 40 years, etc. You're going to get a bit of a shorter lifespan out of that. So we're governed by legislation. We can't charge them, but we can hold them to account, but within the limits of that legislation.
And waiting equally patiently has been Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Question following on really from the talk around pavement trip hazards. What's the sort of time scale between report and repair? I only ask because I've got quite a nasty one on the green in Syston. It was reported by a resident that actually fell over it, and I just really be interested to know what sort of timescale it's going to take to get that repaired, really.
I can't specifically talk for that one, but what happens is we go out and inspectors will assess it, and depending on how they assess it dictates the timescales. If it's Cat 1 defect, which is the most, safety critical, 72 hours we will work to. Then, there's longer ones depending on, if it's less or, so it really depends on that inspector's assessment of how safety critical that defect. And that goes the same with potholes. It's that kind of risk-based approach we take. How urgent is it, or can it wait a bit longer? Because obviously you'll appreciate if we're sending gangs out ad hoc all over, it costs us more. Whereas if we can package up work, program, and do a lot in one area, it's more efficient with the work. So the ones that are lesser safety critical, they get packaged up and programmed within a set timescale, and the ones that really are, we work towards 72 hours to fix those. I can't, say what that one's been assessed at. I don't know it, but that's the principle of how we operate.
And if I may again also the rider on that, in my experience, when potholes and trip hazards on footpaths are reported, they are repaired surprisingly quickly. And there is a report form on the County Council website that I would recommend that you actually use and show all of your parishioners that it's there. Because a lot of people complain about the potholes and they say, well, have you reported it? No. Well, what do you expect then? If the council don't know about it, the council don't know about it. So, but in my experience, they have repaired them incredibly quickly. And all the power to your elbow on that one. Unfortunately, about the buses, I was involved in a bus route once when I was a taxi driver, and I was working for a company that managed one of the buses, and it was not used very much. In fact, some days we didn't take a bus, we took a car because there was just no point in taking a bus. On many days, nobody turned up. But the important thing was that the few people that used it needed it. and now it's not there, they have suffered. And that probably encompasses people like Mrs. Smith. So unfortunately, whilst it's not economical, it does affect individuals. Okay. Oh, Mr. Cook has another question.
Thank you, Chair. It's just for my knowledge, actually. I want to build this picture. So we've got Desford Village, very small village, and we have a lot of big lorries come from abroad using that area. And there's a sleeping policeman right next to some beautiful terraced houses. That's been replaced numerous times. In fact, they've got a cafe now that's making a fortune where people watch the lorries go backwards and forwards, and yet they still take this sleeping policeman out. That's an expense to the locals, obviously the taxpayers. Again, I'm just wondering if there is a system. For instance, if there's 100 lorries going down where TI Tube used to be, Desford, there's 100 lorries and they're all from abroad, are they taxed? Do they pay anything in towards the roads? Because there's a lot of holes in that road. Do they actually get to have to pay anything to come into this country and use the roads as we would? Thank you.
Sorry, not my area of expertise, because that's a government thing, obviously. But to my knowledge is no, they don't have to. You know, they're foreign vehicles. You know, it's if you're in this country, if you're from here, it's a business from here. Obviously, we've got a mechanism to collect tax for that. But you know, the mechanism to do that with other countries is, you know, it's a completely different scenario.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, the report is an update for us all to note, and the committee's comments will be recorded. Is that all agreed? Any to the contrary? Wonderful. And we'll move on to the next item. And I'm not quite sure who, are you using that? Anne, what a pleasure to hear your voice again.
I think you're stretching it there. But anyway, a change of subject, shall we? Street lighting dimming trial we've had. So just want to take you through this. This is a trial we carried out for 18 months. It's come to the end. So these are the conclusions of it. So this is about informing you, seeking your comments before going to Cabinet the end of next week to seek approval for making this permanent. Okay, so I'll tell you a wee bit about it. It was driven by our MTFS savings and the need to take some more money out of our budgets, and particularly around street lighting. And what we proposed was a trial to dim street lights to 30% intensity from 8 o'clock in the evening. Okay, at that time they were at 50% already, so don't think they're at 100%. Very few or none of our street lights are 100%. We have something called a central management system, which means we can turn off, on, up, down our lights as we, you know, it's very flexible, economic and responsive system. So we were able to do this as a trial basis. The trial followed a consultation exercise about implementing this proposal. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of concern about doing this from the public, particularly around safety, crime, antisocial behaviour. Hence, as a result of that consultation, we got agreement from Cabinet to put it in as a trial. So for a limited period, i.e. 18-month period, which we've just now gone through. And I can talk you through now the conclusions coming out of that. Just as a reminder first, before I do that, as the Highway Authority, we have a power that we're able to provide street lighting. We don't have to, it's not a duty. You don't have to put any street lighting out there. But when you do provide it, you obviously need to maintain it to standard, etc., make sure it's safe, all that kind of thing. But, you know, as I say, it's not a duty. We don't have to have street lighting. The trial ran from January 24 to June this year, and as part of it, we monitored a lot of different factors, things like conflict between pedestrians and street furniture, conflict at various types of junctions, you know, so we've monitored those throughout the trial so we can make a reasoned assessment at the end in terms of its impact. During the trial, we had a total of 7 customer inquiries over 18 months. I think you can take what you want from that, but for me, I would take the majority of people didn't notice a difference of those lights going from 50% to 30% at 8 p.m. in the evening. Sorry, another bit I should have said, it's not all of our street lighting. There was various exemptions like town centres, steps, pedestrian crossings, vertical traffic calming, etc. They maintained the previous street lighting regime. It was areas outside that where the street lights were impacted by this. Obviously, in terms of accidents, we monitored that, road traffic collisions, because that was a big concern as well. And the total numbers reduced from 23 to 24 over the periods we're looking at. However, the severity for some categories, as you'll see in the report there, had increased, particularly for motorbikes and bicycles. There's not evidence, however, in those, because we do get the reports on those, to show that street lighting was a particular or an only factor in those collisions, or a contributory factor in any way. We'll continue to monitor road traffic collisions, obviously, and we do that as part of our road safety anyway. For crime, we looked at that, and we had one request during the trial to turn up street lighting due to crime, and that came from the police. It was in Loughborough, and it only affected 2 street lights, so we did that. You know, because our normal thing with park night lighting is if we have a request, we will consult with the police, and if they say yes, there has been an increased activity of crime, we will put it up for a period of time and then review it. So that very much fell into that regime as well. But that was the only request during the 18-month trial. Overall, for crime, the statistics and the figures there have shown there has been an increase in crime. And for the types of crime where street lighting would be a factor, i.e. happen in the evening out in the kind of highway, the highway environment, the robbery and theft from a person. When you look at those stats, although they have gone up, for both the city and Rutland, they have seen higher increases in that type of crime, and they've had no change in their street lighting regime. So what that would tend to indicate is street lighting here has not been the sole factor, may have been part of it, but it's certainly not been the sole factor, because those other areas have seen significantly, in some cases, higher increases of those types of crime in those areas. And again, we'll continue to monitor those the crime stats in that nighttime lighting regime and adjust if needed, you know, in consultation with the police. Overall, the trials delivered energy savings of just over 1.4 million kilowatt hours. Just under 320 tonnes of carbon associated with that, and just under 540,000 in saving in terms of off our electric bill. We are taking a report to Cabinet to recommend making the trial permanent. The last thing I would say on that, however, is please bear in mind that central management system, you know, I mentioned to you, means nothing is ever set in stone with this. If either, you know, an area was found to have much higher crime and we felt, and the police felt as well, lighting was an issue, we can revert to previous lighting regimes. But as I say, the recommendation going to Cabinet is to make the trial permanent, but very much welcome the committee's comments, and we could feed that back to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Lovegrove.
Thank you, Chairman, and again, many thanks for a very comprehensive report. This was an initiative brought in by the previous administration to save the County Council some funds, and I'm absolutely delighted of the results, and I would support the approval for the continuation of the scheme. A fantastic initiative. I would put a proviso on that we monitor the accident level. I think that's one blip. There's a concern in my mind, but like you said, there's an opportunity if there is a black spot. I nearly said a black spot. If there is an area where there is a concern that those lights could be turned up, but I fully endorse the initiative, and it's been a far better success than we ever thought it would be. Thank you.
So, no other questions? Oh, sorry, Mr. Rocks.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a really good comprehensive report. It seems like a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, I was a bit concerned about the crime during the time period going up, but, you know, if it's gone up even more in Rutland and the city, it doesn't seem like that can be any sort of justification for not making these massive savings. And you know, as long as we are going to keep monitoring it, and we can allow areas to come out of it if there are issues. Just a small question. The ongoing staff resource from the street lighting team, do we know how much that's likely to cost? You know, because that's obviously going to have to come out of the £540,000 saving. So that's my only question.
There isn't really a difference in staff resource, because this is all done, you know, by literally a computer system managing the street lighting stock. So it's no different from, we're still going to have to manage those street lighting columns when they become age expired. We'd have to replace them. Have I missed your point?
On page 40.50, it says there's going to be ongoing monitoring and review of accident statistics, and presumably crime as well is going to, you know, if people have got concerns and things, somebody's going to have to deal with that. So I thought on point 51, these tasks will require ongoing staff resource from the street lighting team, it says.
Sorry, yes, I was thinking you meant with the actual street lighting stock itself, so and I was forgetting about that element of it. The accident stats comes in anyway from, you know, the with the report from the police, and we do that annual reporting, so that comes into the team. So yes, there will be a bit more for the street lighting team to take that and have a look for those hours specifically in terms of has there been a change at all, and the same then with the crime stuff. But we do work closely with police on that, so that's fairly light touch stuff that we will do on a regular basis, but I don't see that as overly onerous.
So not even a full-time member of staff or anything?
No, certainly not. We'll be squeezing this in somebody's, you know, no, it will. But we will continue to keep that eye up, and if there's any real blips on that, we can look to do something about it.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook.
Just to add to that, I've noticed, particularly where I live, some of the lights go out at 12 o'clock, if that's still the case. Has there been any consideration for that to change, or is that staying the same, whether that make any difference?
No, you're absolutely right. We have a part night lighting regime, difficult to say that one, and affects about 54% of our street lighting stock. We've got 70,000 street lighting columns, and they turn off at 12 o'clock and come on at, oh, you're testing me now, is it 5:30 or 6? I've always got a mental block. They come back on at a, you know, time in the morning, etc. That is staying exactly the same as it is. So, you know, regardless of this trial, that regime is staying as it is. It's not changing, and it works exactly the same way. If there is a concern about antisocial behaviour or crime, we will speak to the police, and if it is an area of park night lighting and they think it's justified, we will turn those park night lit lights muddled here back on for a while and then review it. So that's that regime stays exactly the same. Sorry, one thing, Chair, if I can, just I forgot to say in the introduction, nowhere else in the country has done this. The reason, for instance, and I did appreciate, I think it was Dr. Bloxham that said it seems like it's a bit of a no-brainer to do. The reason it's not happening elsewhere, if not all authorities have got a central management system, so they can't do it, but you know, if they have got it, is it does go below the design standards. The industry set design standards, which was one of the considerations that we really put to the test in thinking about proposing this and having the trial. And hence, you know, with sector-wide things that we, both the street lighting people and, for instance, I'm involved in, loads of our authorities are looking to see how this has gone, because we are the trailblazers in this one. We have pushed it, and that's been primarily because of our financial position. We've had to find more savings, but equally, it is in some ways, hopefully you will see it's been reassuring because of the trial and the outcomes of those, that you know, the implications are something that, you know, is certainly worth going ahead with. And with that caveat, we have the ability to reverse things if needed.
Dr. Roxham again.
Sorry, just one additional point. We've got the quantitative evidence here from accidents and crime and things. Was there any sort of qualitative consultation done as well? I'm just thinking people who are partially sighted. I had an eye issue earlier in the year. I was wearing an eye patch and couldn't see very well when I was out delivering leaflets. And I know, you know, dodgy pavements and things, it was really bad. And if the light was slightly dimmer, it was really bad. And I just wonder if there was any sort of feedback from charities and things, for example.
There certainly was as part of the consultation before we did the trial, but not during the trial, no. And, you know, that was very much, we were keen, people fed in, we were waiting to hear from people because, you know, definitely from the consultation, it sounded as if we would, but that just didn't come to fruition. And one of the things they did monitor was for any incidents or reports of collisions with things like, you know, street infrastructure, you know, and footpaths, etc., you know, which would particularly come into the area you're talking about, and we haven't had any reports on that.
Yes, Councillor Smith.
First time. Yes, thank you for the report. I was actually substituted on this committee when we discussed it last time, and I can remember it quite a robust conversation. I think we all thought we were going to be dragged back into the 1970s with total blackouts and everything like that. And clearly by the report, that's not happened. And obviously by the report, we saved a phenomenal amount of money so that, you know, when you're presented with these problems, that, you know, we don't have any money. We know that. We are the lowest funded county council, and we have continued to be so. When we're looking at the previous administration, that is, we're looking at significant savings. We were innovative in these ideas, and that's what's been brought forward. And it's really good to see that obviously nobody has complained. It's not made a real difference. And this is, you know, something that I think we should re-adopt very soon. Hopefully the new administration will do that. But just commenting on that, and my brain's ticking away, thinking, we're the first in the country to employ this and to obviously have the technology to be able to do it. Are we looking further forward, potentially at new emerging technologies? Obviously, you've got solar and battery and everything like that, but there are also other things coming out. I've been looking into this since that conversation, actually, about different types of street lighting that could be at zero cost over a period of 5-10 years and actually feeds back into the grid and things like that. Is that something that we're looking at? Thank you.
I would say in general, in principle, we're always trying our best to look at, you know, new tech, innovation, AI, means, you know, new digital stuff, how we can do things more effectively and efficiently. As I say, I did mention before, street lighting engineers are very well plugged into things like the Institute of Lighting Professionals, you know, the sector, you know, the service specific groups to understand what's coming forward, what's value for money. But the thing I would remind you of is we can't, even if there's a brilliant new tech, you know, street lighting column that cuts cost, etc., we can't automatically retrofit everything we've got. You know, think about the capital costs. But yeah, in terms of the principle, we're always looking at what's coming forward that would be a move forward in terms of efficiency, keeping our costs down, but still providing the service we need to provide. And it's not just in street lighting, sorry, we do that across the board because we can't afford not to.
Okay, anybody else? From personal experience, I wrote a report about lighting in general some years ago, before LEDs were generally accepted. And one of the things I found there was that what the experts say is a minimum lighting quantity. In my experience, has always been far more than what's actually needed. And you see that often in offices where they put in what is supposed to be the minimum lighting, and actually the office can work quite happily with half the lights on and things like that. There was one experiment that I was involved in, and it was about dimming the old type lights, not LED lights. And what they did was they lit an industrial estate, and they had the insurance assessors around to see if the insurance would actually accept, you know, this system being used. So the wait when it got dark, they turned the lights on, and the insurance assessor said, "Right, great, let's have a look at it when you dim the lights." And they said they're already dimmed. So I'm a little bit dubious when the lighting experts that you refer to say you need this amount. I'm not sure that you do always need that. But anyway, I would again suggest this report as an update and record the comments. Oh, sorry, Councillor Whitford. I often do.
I know you do. No, I've just got to add that more than £500,000 saving. It's obviously, I'm going to propose that it gets continued as a permanent thing, as a no-brainer has been said over there. And I'd like to thank Anne for that report as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the committee's comments and views will be passed on to the Cabinet for consideration. I think no-brainer may actually be the words that will be used on the 12th of September, and comments will also be recorded in the minutes. Do we all agree? Good. So date of the next meeting. Somewhere on this bit of paper, I have the date of the next meeting. Oh, there it is. It's on the 6th of November. Okay, 2 p.m. And as stated at the start of the meeting, I have no urgent items. And I think that concludes today's meeting. Oh, one last thing. The microphones. I have to confess, the problem we had with the microphones at the beginning of the meeting was the fact that I couldn't use this panel properly. I've been pressing the wrong button. That's why you may have noticed in the second half of the meeting, we didn't have a problem. It was my fault. I do apologise. So apart from that, I conclude the meeting.